Hello, I'm Keisha Rogers, and I want to thank you for joining us on this afternoon. This has been, or this evening, should I say, it is Saturday, April 5th, and this has been an extraordinary week. And President Trump laid out a bold initiative for the United States and the world. I think the discussion that we have titled this discussion tonight, as Liberation Week, globalization ends, a new system begins, is very fitting. I'm going to be joined tonight by Brian Vance. We're going to continue our discussion from last week. As many of you know, we were on prior to President Trump making his big announcement on Liberation Day, which was April 2nd. And a lot has happened since Trump announced his tariff policies, and we want to talk about that. We also want to discuss what this means for the transformation and economic renaissance that's well underway at this time. And following President Trump's announcement on at the Rose Garden at the White House, there has been quite an uproar of discussion. But his cabinet, which features his Vice President, J.D. Vance, and his Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, along with the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, have gone out in massive defense of President Trump's policies. But I think what's very interesting, most of you probably watched this. If you didn't, I'd encourage you to go back and watch what President Trump did. That was a total break from the last 40 plus years of globalization, free trade policies. As we said, this is the end of globalization. And that has been made very clear in the discussions that have taken place on various interviews done by his cabinet. I think I'll start by saying that one of the discussions, interviews that was done by Vice President J.D. Vance in the aftermath of President Trump's tariff announcements. He he asked the question, "What has the globalist economy gotten the USA?" That's a very important question. Well, I'd say absolutely nothing. So you might remember a song. What has it done for you? Absolutely nothing. And that's what um, J- Vice President J.D. Vance made clear. It's been fundamentally based on incurring huge amounts of debt and also having borrowing from cheap labor, destroying our manufacturing, destroying our industries. And he made clear that the objective of President Trump is to open up factories in the United States and stop our industries, our manufacturing from closing down. And recognizing that the core of a productive economy is our labor force, is our workforce. And we're going to be discussing that tonight. What areas of investment into our labor force are absolutely needed right now? And I think it's extremely important to recognize, as was stated in the interview that Tucker Carlson did with the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, that President Trump's announcement is something that he has been committed to. Tariff policies, the policies to end free trade and have a fair trade, reciprocal trade policy. And this is something he's been discussing going back to his previous administration, but that this is a 40-year-old initiative or vision that the president has had. And I think that's important. He also stated that it was also stated during that interview that that this didn't just start in terms of the policies for tariffs in the recent period. This goes all the way back to the first Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton. And I think that that's very important to understand, that this history of tariffs is a reemergence of what our American system was founded on. So we're going to get deeper into this discussion, and let me just bring up quickly here before I bring in Brian. I think what we're going to be talking about tonight is the question of the science drivers for our economy and workforce. This has to be the key in the discussion of tariffs, bringing forth a workforce of manufacturing, economic, productive development in the United States, and where these science drivers are going to be focused and important in terms of rapidly upshifting our economy and upshifting our workforce. And this is something that economist Lyndon LaRouche understood and was very, very clear on, that tariffs had to be followed by what was called capital investments in your economy. So I want to turn it over to Brian now to start to give us just a sense of where we need to be focused on in our investments into our economy, into our workforce, the type of capital investments and the science drivers that's needed to fully realize what President Trump is doing with his vision for manufacturing and industrial development through his tariffs. So let me go ahead and take this down 1 second, and I will bring Brian in here. Here, there we go. And
Okay.
I'm going to take myself off here for a second and let you give some opening remarks, and then I'll come back in for us to exchange some discussion.
Okay. That's great. Thank you, Keisha. Good to be back with everybody.
Oh,
And
1 second, please. Sorry, hit the wrong button. Thank you. Go ahead.
all right. Yeah. So the tariff wall has gone up, and now we have to produce for ourselves. That's really the key. The key. It's not a matter of what happens with the stock market. You know that's as Trump's cabinet members are pointing out. That's really tertiary. The bottom 50% of Americans don't have equity. They've got debt. And a lot in between are not much better shape. The middle class has been pushed down. And so here we are. You can just put up the next slide. Thank God Trump is back. America is back as a consequence of the opening shots that the administration has made. It's been dozens and dozens of executive orders the president has issued to date. One of the first, I think it was the first, was the declaration of a national energy emergency. And that's very important to also keep in mind as we're going forward here. President Trump is rolling out his program step by step, and it has to be thought about and discussed from the standpoint of a totality. But summing it up, we have to produce for ourselves. And that's not to say we're isolating. The United States is coming back, and it's coming back as a producer nation, and as such will be going out into the world, out into space, out into the universe, microcosm and macrocosm. We're back, and that's also very important to be clear on, and for your neighbor to be clear on. These are not steps towards isolation. Quite the opposite. We're level setting world trade. We're putting the world by our own actions on solid ground. So I think this is where the question of science drivers, or the role of science drivers comes in. Science drivers that can drive increases in productivity, the spin-offs of major developments. We'll go through some. Some will be familiar with you, to you, I'm sure. Um, and they will drive rising wage levels, standards of living, and they will bring the cost of everything down. Um, uh, they're what we need to propel the economy. And if you think about it, the country's suppression in this country did not start with COVID. We've been suppressed since, you could say, at least 1971, when the dollar was taken off the gold standard. We deindustrialized. The policy, which became known as financialization and globalization, was a policy of deindustrializing the country. Uh, and as a consequence, people couldn't do much for their children. In their personal lives, we all tried to do uh, as much as possible for our loved ones. But in terms of the nation, we were unable to actually reach out and utilize the policies adopted by our nation and mold them and shape them such that they contributed to a better future for our children and children's children. So, this is a very profound process we're in the middle of now. This is deep and fundamental, as Keisha was saying. If we There's going to be several steps that are going to have to be taken, and I'll mention some here just briefly. First of all, I think we're going to be not too far out, or maybe it'll be just kind of a continuing underlying theme going forward. But I think we're going to be looking at Doge 2.0 in the sense of antitrust actions. Our economy's been cartelized, whether it's big tech or the big five in aerospace defense or big ag and so on. The economy's become essentially a system what used to be called holding companies of these cartels who fix prices and prevent scientific and technological progress. And so I just want to mention that goes to the Federal Reserve. It goes to the transformation that has to occur in terms of financing for the economy. We're going to have to increase actual energy consumption, if you will, in the sense of the resources available to every family. That's going to be fundamental. And if you're following some of these interviews with Trump's cabinet, you see that across the board, again, as Keisha mentioned, they're absolutely on the same page on this. They are concerned about reversing the conditions of life that have been imposed on the majority of Americans, and which all Americans suffer from, really. So and this is going to mean, for example, taking on the healthcare bureaucracy as well. We're going to have to solve the healthcare issues beyond, of course, getting rid of fentanyl and the rest. We actually have to deliver healthcare at a price that can be afforded by Americans. The declining life expectancy, other measures of American health. Of course, Robert Kennedy Jr. is attempting to address this and will address aspects of it. But in terms of bringing down the price of medical care, this is going to be fundamental. So overall, the standard of living of Americans is going to be coming back. That's the point. Not just a endless fight against, pushing the like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. But we're going to be succeeding at this now because of what we're unleashing. So I want to turn then to, I just mentioned one paycheck for family. I mean, that's where we have to go. One paycheck should support an entire family. I mean, it's a fake economy where you have not one person working anymore, but both parents are working. If there are two parents in the household, and then they're hiring a third person who's taking care of the children. Well, now you have three people employed, but are they actually producing any more in terms of the actual real economy? No, you have three people working and they're probably producing less in terms of real economic growth or a contribution than one person used to as a productive worker in industry and manufacturing. It just, we haven't been measuring, we haven't been aware in that sense of how poorly our circumstances have become. So I want to turn to manufacturing itself here now. We have numbers of shortages we're going to be running into. We mentioned some last week. Turbines, GE Vernova. There's a 5-year a backlog for their large turbines for natural gas and nuclear power plants. And some folks have jumped in to try to corral that limited number of turbines and dictate terms of business deals. There's a side story there, but transformers are another example of this. I mean, we have foreign companies coming in, Siemens of Germany and Hitachi of Japan, and TMC, I think that's an Indian firm, are coming in to build transformers, but we're largely importing our transformers from places like South Korea. If you're going to expand the energy grid, as Trump is rightfully demanding, these key areas have to be addressed in terms of manufacturing capacity. It's not a matter of producing one or two more. It's a matter of that we have to transform the manufacturing capacity of the nation. These are just simple examples of that. But how do you do that? I mean, first of all, manufacturing. I mean, the vast majority of manufacturers in the country employ 20 employees or less. The vast majority, 20 or less. The question of uncertainty, that uncertainty, I'm just quoting the current president and CEO of the National Association of Manufacturers. He just, was saying in his speech a couple of weeks ago there in Ohio, uncertainty is the enemy of investment. And it's absolutely true. For manufacturing to grow, for capital investment to be made, to buy a new piece of machinery, just think of that. It may cost you 10 grand, 20 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand. If you're going to make that investment in that piece of machinery, much less multiple pieces of machinery, you have to have some, if you will, assurance, not insurance, but assurance that there is going to be a demand for what you can produce. Whether you're a machine shop operator, you're producing glass products, plastic molding, whatever it is, you've got to know that you're going to be able to pay for that piece of equipment over time. Trump's trying to address this with, increased depreciation rates, tax breaks, so there's the steps that the president is taking, and they're good steps. But we have to think in terms of the overall circumstances that we've got to create if you're going to promote capital-intensive industry and capital-intensive manufacturing, which is where we got to go. If you're going to increase productivity, you want to go to the cutting edge. You want the most advanced investments into manufacturing, not yesterday's. You don't hire yesterday's generals to fight today's wars. You don't double down on manufacturing by going to opening up the old rusty a machine shop. You've got to advance rapidly. You may utilize the old equipment, in the process, of getting yourself up on your feet or moving forward. But the point is, you go to the most advanced technology you can make available, or that can be made available to you that you can purchase. And so, whether it's 100% bonus depreciations, by Trump, or as I said, tax breaks, these help, but they're not sufficient for small and medium manufacturers that they got to see 5-10 years out at least in terms of durable demand. Um, uh, I just want to add then a further note on this, um, which is there's been a number of these efforts to create innovation by setting up innovation hubs. I mean, today there's high-tech innovation hubs of some sort in most major cities, promoted in conjunction with universities and whatnot. But, 10 years ago, you had Manufacturing USA set up. That's under the National Institute for Standards and Technology. It's set up some 18 hubs around the nation, more substantial. But even today, the entire budget for Manufacturing USA for 18 hubs in innovation is $98 million. The total for 18 projects, major innovation, quote unquote, hubs, in advanced robotics, bioindustrial manufacturing. I'm just naming a few of them. Cybersecurity, Advanced Manufacturing Institute, Lightweight Metals Manufacturing Institute, et cetera. They're spread around the country. Likewise, the CHIPS Act also set up 31 so-called tech hubs, but these tech hubs are getting a max of $75 million apiece. Anyway, I'm just saying, it's not a matter of proliferating a number of quote unquote innovation hubs or this sort of thing. We can certainly use what's there, and that is, I'm sure, being considered. And Trump has made efforts in his first term to launch a project for advancing machine tooling and the training of skilled machinists, which is proliferated in the South here, at least. I think elsewhere as well. It's not to say they're bad. It's to say, look, that, it ain't going to work that way. What's critical is we've got to secure demand, durable demand. And secondly, the capital has to be there. The local banks, community banks, major regional center banks have to have the capital, the liquidity to loan to industry based on durable demand that's foreseeable, to move this thing rapidly forward. And this goes back to some of the things that President Trump is initiating. I think some of you are familiar with the National Security Capital Forum. We discussed that a bit last week as it related to the president's executive order on mineral resources. It's going to pull together the major banks around the table, on a national security footing under the Defense Production Act, and say, okay, this is what we need to mine and process minerals. This is what you guys are gonna have to finance, and we appreciate in advance your public service, but you're going to do it. These Duragist steps are coming from the Trump administration, and I think there'll be many more. Okay, so that just for manufacturing, but then turn quickly. Nuclear energy is an absolutely necessary science driver to manufacturing, to promoting the entire sector. Here's just a simple diagram for the Department of Energy, and take it with a grain of salt. But you have these reactor sizes. Micro reactors on the left. That's becoming kind of a thing. Like you're going to have one in your backyard. Small modular reactors, which of course are a real big thing right now in terms of the talk and the chatter, and some of it's very good and it's durable. And then full size nuclear reactors. When I say greatest, I'll take the sizes of these things. These are just this is just a simple graphic. Uh, but the size there in terms of megawatts, MWs, gives you an idea of comparative sizes. And microreactors will play a role in the military and in industrial siting, particularly in areas off the grid and so on and so forth as well. Um, President Trump said on the campaign trail, we're going to build hundreds and hundreds of big, beautiful power plants. And that's absolutely critical to what we have to go forward with. We're going to have to invest. And I just want to bring this forward again for emphasis. We've got to build base load power, whether it's natural gas, combined cycle, natural gas plants, nuclear plants. We've got to have 500 megawatt up to a gigawatt plus size power plants built in this country, hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds of them. We're going from about 1.1 or 1.2 terawatts of power in the electrical grid in this country. The lights aren't staying on. We've moved, the administration is moving to halt the shutdown of coal-fired plants. There's resources going into building additional natural gas combined cycle power plants. That's good. But we've got to be thinking in terms of a science driver. We've got to be thinking in terms of the future. And I'll come back to an element of that. If you could go to the next slide. This is the plant Vogtpool in Waynesboro, Georgia. Plants 3 and 4 just went online in the last 2 years. This is the largest nuclear power plant facility in the country now. And those were the 2 latest nuclear power plants in the country, the first nuclear power plants in the country in, I believe, roughly 30 years. Certainly the first newly designed power plants to be built in the United States in that period of time. But I'm putting this up here to just, you see the big cooling towers. That's just evaporation. That's water vapor evaporating into the sky. The actual nuclear power plants are what you see down below there in the middle of the picture. That's 2 of them right there. And if you go to the next slide, you get a better sense of this. That's the AP1000 plant that drives plants 3 and 4. And those things are use a very significant, much less amount of concrete, steel, valving, safety mechanisms that have to be built in. They're a big advance. They're what's called Generation 3+ reactors. Now, it's interesting, when the Promethean action activists were up on Capitol Hill a week plus ago, at the same time, more than 30 Westinghouse Electric supply chain providers, partners, companies that provide the components, the Westinghouse AP1000 reactors, were up on Capitol Hill as well. They met with over 80 congressmen, and the point they were making is, we're here. We can build these reactors now. Small modular reactors are being discussed. They're in research and they're in development, but there is not a single small modular reactor operating in this country right now. Further, I just underscore the point by emphasizing again, we need base load power. That base load means basically 24/7. 24/7 power, operating close to 365 days a year. The kind of power we used to have where we didn't think about electricity. We just knew it was taken care of. We have to establish those conditions again, not just as a personal prerogative on our part, but because energy and cheap energy and lots of energy is what's required for industry and manufacturing in particular, heavy industry and manufacturing. So That's why the president declared a national economic emergency to say, okay, we got to go all out. We got to produce energy for this country to grow it. If we don't grow energy, we're not going to have it. Um, uh, and I just want to then stress that modularity and the potential of also producing these nuclear reactors in factories, I mean, that's a fact. Uh, any company today coming forward with a small modular reactor, new scale, and so forth, um, those small modular, small modular reactors already have to submit as part of their applications with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, their plans for building out their modular components in factories. And that's part of also simplifying the siting process to authorize on the basis of a single plant design that then can be built in multiple locations, right? You don't have to come back again and again and again for each new site, which has been the way in which this thing has not worked in the past. That's all being cleared. The roads are being cleared on that. But factory built and otherwise modularity as a principle is now firmly established, as with the AP1000s. So we can move forward if there's the capital. Now, this is again a point. Look, I mean, we can't do this cheap. We're going to have to make major capital investments up front. The nation, we as a nation, have to decide to make the big capital investments up front. What Trump is doing, President Trump and his cabinet are doing, what he's doing in collaboration with his private partners, in the private sector, and doing in conjunction with state governors is excellent. It's well and good. But we're going to have to create, as again indicated by the executive order on mineral resources, from I believe it was March 20th, we're going to have to create new mechanisms to provide public credit and private credit into the energy sector, and we're going to have to do it to drive forward nuclear power. There's a thing in nuclear energy, it's called first of a kind. There's another concept called nth of a kind, meaning roughly after 10 plants are built. The upfront cost of building the first nuclear reactor of any design is costly. To repeat that process again and again is to drive that process, the cost of that, down. And we already know that because AP1000s are being built in China and the prices rapidly come down. We can come back to that if people are interested. But the point is, we're holding ourselves back. And while states are, over 25 states have passed legislation in the last year to promote nuclear power. This is not an outlier concept. States are behind this. They know this is where we got to go because they know this trains up the workforce. This provides skilled jobs. This moves the standard of living of the state, of their state, up, as opposed to wind and solar or even natural gas. Let me just go, if you go to the next slide there, I just want to make a final point on nuclear energy, which often doesn't get talked about. And I think it deserves some attention, and I think you'll appreciate it. Here is different industrial processes in broad categories. In the blue. And then down below is different types of nuclear power plants. At the very top, across the top, you see temperature, low temperature, medium temperature, high temperature. That's the temperature at which reactors operate. All right. Now, process heat, an important concept. Power plants produce, we think of it as producing electricity. power plants can also produce heat. They as a byproduct, they're not 100% efficient. They're 50% efficient, or 60% efficient, or 35% efficient, but they produce heat at temperatures. Advanced nuclear reactors, generation 3, 3 plus, 4. If you look down at the lower part, in pink there, small modular liquid metal reactors, high temperature gas cooled reactors. You see the heat levels at which those reactors operate, going off the charts to the right. Okay, when you get to high temperature gas cooled reactors, for example, liquid metal is like chloride and sodium, chloride, uranium fuel, and so forth. At those high, going back to the blue, as you get up to 600 degrees degrees centigrade, or on up to 900 degrees centigrade, all kinds of industrial processes become possible utilizing that heat produced as a byproduct of nuclear reactor technology. Direct steel making, thermochemical H2 production, steam electrolysis. You see them there. Petrochemical processes become more and more efficient. So that moving up the ladder to high temperature reactors, moving beyond combined cycle natural gas plants and so forth, they also produce, waste heat that's used in various areas. But as you move up the ladder, you open up a range of other industrial processes that are more efficient, more productive. And this is where we want to go. And of course, going in that direction, we're moving in the direction of fusion energy as well. So thank you for putting that up, Keisha. And I think at this point, I'm just going to add a note here because it's been brought up as a question to me. The role of the importance of reviving NWAPA, the North American Water Alliance project for America. Where is that? How important is that now? I would say in brief, and again, we can come back to this, but we've got to get our game together. We've got to get our act together here first. The building of NWAPA would require, at least as a rough estimate, 300 million tons of steel. We don't have the capacity to produce that kind of steel at the same time that we're building out nuclear power plants, rebuilding cities, building waterworks, and so on. We're digging ourselves out of a hole here. As we dig ourselves out of a hole, then we can set our sights on on NWAPA, which is a project to bring water down from Alaska to create a man-made river down through the Rocky Mountain Trench, through Canada into the prairie states and beyond, to really begin terraforming a very significant part of our country, which is undeveloped or relatively undeveloped. Could be producing far more in terms of plant life, supporting far more livestock, could be the basis for new cities and so on. But that's going to have to be based on us, first of all, getting our economy up and running and producing on a scale beyond what we're producing now. So that's my view. That's obviously something to debate and discuss. NWAPA is not merely aspirational. It's something we're going to have to do. It's going to be a further step for the development of our continent, and also for our 51st state. But I'll leave it there for now. But I want to move on to fusion energy. And the connection here is the NWAPA is going to be powered by nuclear power plants. We need lots of them right here. We got to get them first here. then we can build them there. On fusion energy, this is another major science driver. We've talked about it many times here with Promethean Pact, I think. So many of you are familiar with that and with the work of LaRouche Pact before. Let's go to the, I think it's the next slide, if I'm correct. This is the SPARC, picture of the SPARC plant. And this is being built now up in Massachusetts. It's under construction. It's the plant itself. The tokamak reactor is under. This is the most advanced, privately funded, arguably, fusion power project in the United States. There's some $3 billion that's now invested into it from the private sector. There's also federal support, but that's relatively marginal at this point. Bill Gates, Breakthrough Energy, has put a chunk in. Jeff Bezos, these sorts of people have made a big investment in Commonwealth Fusion that's designed and built SPARC, which is a spinoff out of MIT University. Now, this plant you can see is relatively small. This is going to be coming online. This plant, which is a test reactor, will come online later this year or at the latest, the beginning of next year. It's being built, it's being completed. I'll just mention that, key piece of this project, the base of the reactor itself had to be imported from Italy, had to be made 75 tons, specialty steel, had to be machined, and then transported from Italy halfway around the world, almost, to be placed in as the footing of the SPARC reactor itself. It'll be like the bottom of the thermos of the tokamak reactor itself. So that's where this speaks to, again, this question of the need to build out heavy machining and heavy manufacturing in the United States. The local nuclear power plants had to import major components from South Korea. This again has to be addressed if we're going to build out at scale. If you're going to multiply the number of these facilities. Commonwealth Edison has already announced a plant to be built in Virginia. This was announced back in December in conjunction with the governor of Virginia. Now, that may be a little aspirational in terms of the timeline they're setting, in terms of 2028 or thereabouts. But nonetheless, we're moving into a fusion era. This is a whole new revolution in technology, new revolution in material science. And you can move on very quickly to the next slide. There's a tremendous amount of research going on throughout the national labs of the United States, universities, coordinated, the University of Tennessee there in Knoxville, where Keisha is, similar efforts going on down here in Texas, other places, as well as the national labs, to make rapid advances. This is one example. If you have some knowledge of tokamak reactors, basically donut shaped, on the inside of that donut is a fusion blanket, which absorbs the neutrons released in a fusion reaction and the fusing of heavy isotopes of hydrogen, deuterium, tritium being the major ones. That has a triple role, which is both to absorb the energy, the heat, and for that heat to be transferred out and to drive turbines, in terms of what we have in terms of a first generation, if you will, of fusion reactors. But also it has the role of absorbing neutrons, which also degrade the not only degrade the reactor itself rapidly, neutron bombardment. So at the Idaho National Laboratory, they've now developed a means for testing fusion blankets in their most advanced nuclear test reactors, nuclear test reactors, not fusion reactors, but nuclear reactors that simulate conditions of the fusion reaction in terms of neutron bombardment. So this is just an example. It may seem a little uh, abstract to you or whatever, but this is basic material science. This is going on right now. You can build a test reactor, but if you kept running that thing with neutron bombardment, it wouldn't last very long. If you're going to build an actual operating fusion reactor that's going to last 40, 50, 60 years in terms of productive lifespan, you got to work these problems through. Next slide, real quick. This is an example of fuel being developed, uranium chloride fuel, for fast reactors, fast neutron reactors of the small modular nuclear type. It's just another breakthrough. They're now producing the required fuel at scale, beginning to. Now they've got the know-how down at the Idaho National Laboratory in conjunction with Southern Energy and with TerraPower. So we can move on, but this is just some of what's also going on. This is all moving forward rapidly, the entire area. And I want to go now just to the most essential kind of principle here. There is no limits to growth. The whole idea of a post-industrial society, it was a fraud. It was a hoax. It never existed. The only post-industrial society is a feudal society. It's a negative growth, dark age. Mankind's advance has been by increasing energy flux density, and this is a two-dimensional representation of what is captured here as a three-dimensional cone or series of cones, right? Moving up from left to right, from wood to coal to petroleum to fission to fusion, increasing the kilowatt hours of energy produced per pound of the energy source. Wood, coal, petroleum, uranium, hydrogen isotopes, the amount of energy released, and this reflects. This is a picture over time of the development of society. This is where we're going. We're going to continue now this process of advance. It's an exciting time to be alive. Moving quickly now to Moon and Mars. This is part of this ongoing project, and this actually happens to be a U.S. Army astronaut with the Space Force, as well as with NASA up at the ISS. We'll come back to the Golden Dome in a minute. But as you know, probably the Starship is going to be launching. The next test launch is going to be in the next week or two. NASA, the ISS, it's being phased out by 2030. Private companies, Axiom Space, for example, we're going to have private space stations going up, being assembled in low Earth orbit. Those are low Earth orbit. Those are just in the, 200, 250 miles above Earth. We're going to be beyond that in terms of our national mission. We're going to be moving forward to the Moon and Mars and beyond, colonizing them. This is the process. It's the commitment of the nation. It's a science driver, as it was in the Kennedy area with the moonshot. And maybe, it's kind of settled in. We all hear about Starship. We hear about the Falcon 9s going up and landing on return, and it just is becoming part of our day-to-day life. But this is transformative in terms of the economy, in terms of science, in terms of industry, as we build out and develop the new science required. Artemis 2 is going to be going up now roughly in April of, I believe, 2026. That's its date now. roughly a year from now. Um, Artemis 3, which will be the next manned landing on the moon, is now scheduled for mid-2027. These are things I'm sure that President Trump is committed to making happen, to getting these projects through and finished and completed. Russia and China are colonizing the moon. China has its space station and more. All of these, the race is on. The race is on, and it's a competitive race, which is a driver for our own ingenuity and creativity. And then to kind of tie it together, I just want to mention quickly the moon, colonizing the moon, that's going to require nuclear power. And small modular reactors are being built with that in mind. The development of cislunar space, the space between Earth and moon, transportation and so forth, is going to require nuclear powered tugs, space tugs as they're called. Mars is going to require fusion rockets, fusion powered rockets. You want to get there at 1G gravitation. You want to get there at 1G acceleration, rather. So you can get there in 2 to 4 days. You don't want people exposed to radiation long term. So fusion rockets are going to be key. First, we'll send up unmanned ones to deliver supplies and so forth in advance. So we'll get to know the technology. But fusion rockets are going to be critical, so that the connection between development of nuclear science, fusion science, building these out on Earth to unleash new unlimited sources of energy and bring energy costs down is simultaneously going to give us the wherewithal to expand our horizons in space science and space exploration. So finally, with the next slide, I want to begin to move into what I wanted to close with, which is, our most precious resource. I think it's just critical to keep this in mind throughout. It's our own young men and women, our next generation, which many of them, I was speaking to a nuclear engineer up in the Midwest yesterday, and this engineer was back at the university to take some courses in a related field, was reporting that the students there, they're all Trumpers. These young men and women are coming up in a new age of exploration, of frontiers. And we've got to ensure that this process, by our own actions, is carried forward into the next generation and generations to come. This is our most precious resource. And to move on to the next slide, this is an example. This is NASA has a competition called the Big Idea Challenge. It's directed to university students. And one of the projects that they developed was a project for producing, manufacturing iron and steel on the moon. This is a visual of the process which they've developed. In space manufacturing is going to be critical to our future. Robotics, of course, is part of that. In space manufacturing on the moon and elsewhere. Okay, so having said that, we're going to move on to another feature of space. If you will put up the next slide there, Keisha. We're moving into the realm of the Golden Dome. President Trump's executive order calling for the creation of what he's now terming America's Golden Dome, a strategic defense of the United States, of American citizens and our allies. And so here let's just pose the question, the problem. Many of you are aware of it. It is probably most visceral in terms of the concept of hypersonic weapon systems. which both Russia and China have developed. They've utilized. It's been utilized in Ukraine and elsewhere by Russia. There's no question of their developing capabilities and their advance of us in terms of these offensive weapons, hypersonic weapon systems. And here's the problem. In a nutshell, this graphic. Of course, we have an early warning system for ballistic missiles. They follow that ballistic missile trajectory you see in a sort of aqua blue there in this graphic, and you can see that even if over the horizon, radar can detect those launches at a relatively easy early point. And of course, from geostationary orbit, where we have CBERS, where we have the SBIR geostationary orbiting surveillance system way up, like 20,000 miles up. I think it's 20,000. It's over 12,000 miles up. Then they see them much earlier, and then the potential exists to target those ballistic missiles and take them out because they're coasting. They're just coasting once they've left the ground, fired by rockets. They're just coasting. And so they can be picked off with ground intercept missiles and perhaps more advanced systems soon in the future. But with hypersonics, here we see, you see it in the red, you're probably ahead of me. Hypersonic glide vehicles with their warheads, multiple warheads and so forth. Well, they have a boost phase. They launch up to the edge of the atmosphere, but then the glide vehicles are released from the booster and they come down into the atmosphere. And these hypersonic glide vehicles on their trajectory here, you are traveling at Mach 5, Mach 10, Mach 23 even. They're flying very, very fast. You know, if you were confronting a hypersonic cruise missile, which also exists, if you were an aircraft carrier, once you saw it on your screen that it was coming at you, you probably have no more than a minute or two to not only track it but target it and take it out. It's just this is an incredible technology. Now, so that at that point, the radar, ground-based radar, and because of that low trajectory, the geostationary orbit infrared sensors in geostationary orbit usually can't pick up these glide vehicles. They're not going to be visible to us until it's too late to stop. Maybe pick off one or two, you know, with an Aegis interceptor, something like that. But that you know, it's bad news. All right. So, okay, so let's move forward. So, of course, you have, yeah, well, let's go ahead. Go on to the next slide. This is how some President's Golden Dome, which is to build both what we need in terms of a warning and tracking system in near space, low Earth orbit, not way up there at high Earth orbit. That doesn't work for this case, but in low Earth orbit, and to build the new ground and space-based interceptor systems. To build that Golden Dome, here is the view of General Michael Goodline, who's the vice chief of space operations of the U.S. Space Force. All right, and this is just from a couple of weeks ago. They're at the National Security Innovation Base Summit. And he's saying here out loud what's known. And you can read it. Maybe you're ahead of me. We are not accustomed to having to integrate at the level that's going to be required. And I'll develop that a little bit more in a second. This is on the magnitude of the Manhattan Project, you know, that built the first A-bombs during World War II in top secrecy. It's going to take a concerted effort from the very top of our government. It's going to take national will to bring all this together. It's going to be a heavy lift across all the organizations that are going to be participating. And what we've got to really push back on are the organizational boundaries and the cultures that are going to try to slow us down or to prevent us from working together. All right, that's from March 5th, 2025, a couple of weeks ago. Move on to the next slide, if you will, Tisha. Now, I want to give a sense of this in terms of, what this system looks like. And this is really doesn't give you a total picture, but because it's kind of biased, you have these different agencies that build different systems. So it's hard to get a good graphic that includes all of these different systems simultaneously. That's what the general we were just quoting was talking about in terms of pushing back against the organizational process that could slow us down or prevent us from accomplishing what we need to accomplish. This is another area for Doge in part, but here's what you're going to do. What we're going to do. Well, first of all, we're already putting up, since Trump launched this in his first administration, with the support of Congress, bipartisan support of Congress, we've launched the beginnings of a layered warning and tracking system in low Earth orbit. In low Earth orbit, like where the space station is. And we're going to be building that out. It's going to be hundreds, perhaps thousands of satellites. You have dedicated, like the Starlink system. This is part of what makes this possible now. It wasn't possible back with for example, President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative. It is possible now. We have been launching the first tranche 0. We're beginning to launch tranche 1 of this layered low Earth orbit system into space. There also the very first couple of hypersonic and ballistic missile tracking sensors. That's HTBSS. That's what you see here in the picture here on the right most clearly. The low Earth orbit warning and tracking satellites have to communicate what they find. They see the boost phase. They communicate that to the HBTSS. The HBTSS, which has a narrower as opposed to a wide area sensor, zeroes in and gets a closer read on what's being unleashed by in that boost phase, and it then provides the data down to Earth, or if they're space-based interceptors, to those interceptors to target those hypersonic and other vehicles. So as a consequence, what we're talking about here is we're talking about a mesh network in low Earth orbit. Just that system alone of the HBTSS, and the warning and tracking layer. This is itself called the Proliferated Warfighter Space Architecture. But beyond that, we're upgrading the satellites, infrared sensing systems we have in geostationary orbit, and we're also going to be advancing and developing a mid-Earth orbit system as well as backup for low Earth orbit. But this entire system across these 3 domains of distance from the Earth has to be a single meshed network of communications, real time. And so what's being advanced and developed in the course of this, that is now being tested in space between satellites in different orbit, is laser communications. Lasers used to carry data. And and to rapidly, at the speed of light, communicate data from one point to another. Keep in mind that the satellites in low Earth orbit are moving thousands of miles an hour. So they see something that within a very short period of time, they're out beyond the range of seeing those the hypersonic glide vehicles, for example, any longer. The next satellites or a nested set of satellites coming along has to pick up where that last satellite left off. And so this system is being developed along with the weapon systems that are going to be required to deal with this. Upgraded brilliant pebbles, that is, small CubeSats armed with small missiles or perhaps laser weapons. Thousands of them, so that at any point in time, hundreds, 200-300 of them would, or more, would be over Russia and China at any moment in time to catch missiles in boost phase. There's the development of laser weapon systems. Of course, they're being deployed on Earth in battlefield situations now by the Navy, by the Army. And then you have neural beam weapon system that deploy neutron beams. That's also been tested, and that's a future capability as well. So a lot of this is in flux. It is a Manhattan Project. It's going to drive science. It is driving science right now. And just the final slide there, all of this, if you step back and just kind of take it all in, fission, advanced fission development, fusion energy, the exploration of space, and the Golden Dome, formerly known as the America's Iron Dome Initiative. These are going to roll out, are intent on rolling out at scale, digital manufacturing, the most advanced manufacturing possible. We're going to either bust, we're either going to break ourselves over this or we're going to accomplish this, because this is existential for defense, among other things. But it's more profoundly important to the development of our entire society. Lockheed Martin and other companies are rolling out, advanced digital manufacturing and iterative production, so that prototypes can be rapidly produced, but also then reiterated using Internet of Things, utilizing EI inputs, etc. Will it work? Can it be brought together? Can it be done at scale? That's an open question, but that's where we're going. And again, it's an exciting time, but these are the science drivers that are going to transform the economy around us. So I'll stop there, Keisha. I hope that's useful. That's a little long, but it covers a lot of ground.
That's exciting. All right. I know there's probably a lot of questions. On the last point you were making, though, I just want you to tie it back in, because we're going back to the workforce manufacturing, and on the question of the Iron Dome or the Golden Dome, where the manufacturing in relationship to various contractors and what they will be producing for the production of the systems that you just discussed that go into the Iron Dome. I know you have Booz Allen Hamilton, as you said, Lockheed Martin, you have these various defense contractors, and they are already putting out proposals or programs, but it's also going to be advanced AI and automation. So I'm asking the question more so to how is the manufacturing for such a program as this going to feed back into the productivity of the economy?
Well, we want to move to advanced manufacturing across the board. We want to apply the most advanced manufacturing technologies, that will require a higher skill level, education, cultural level, and a higher pay scale to the workforce. We're not run out of work. There's more work to do than ever. I mean, first of all, you just look around at the country and you realize, you know, from rebuilding the infrastructure of our cities on across, there's so much to do. So, so upgrading our capability for steel production, utilizing high process heat from nuclear reactors, for example, or a totally different example, the U.S. Space Force, which Trump uh, announced and was created under his first administration. People may have kind of missed it because of COVID and everything else, the Russia, and all the rest. But President Trump launched the Space Force. Well, a significant part, the actual figure is, I think it's classified, but a very significant, maybe 40%, maybe more of the U.S. Space Force is civilian employees. I mean, they're recruiting from campuses. They're recruiting in physics. They're recruiting in engineering. To oversee the U.S. Space Force in conjunction with the Missile Defense Agency and so forth, all of it under the umbrella Department of Defense, requires high technical skills. It's not just sitting in front of a radar screen and looking at bleeps. And the contractual process that's demanded in terms of turnaround times, in terms of delivery. All of this is being overhauled. It's got to all be overhauled by men and women in the Space Force and related agencies. And so you have, I covered a lot of this in my Substack articles, series of articles that are available now on Brian Lance at substack.com. And there's no paywall. It's free. But there's a 3-part series actually in 5 sections up there that goes through a lot of this more in detail. But all of this from the factories that Lockheed Martin is building out in Maryland, or the projects being built out there in Alabama by the arsenal. These are advanced manufacturing capabilities, but they don't work without human beings. They don't work without human creativity directing them, making the crucial decisions, programming them, repairing them, maintaining them. So this is just moving the workforce up from where it's been to higher pay scales and much more interesting work, exciting work. So I hope that in part answers your question. I mean, if you're going to replace urban infrastructure, just think of the sewage systems in major cities, particularly, going east of the Mississippi. I mean, the amount of pipe and so forth that you've got to produce, we can't mess around. We've got it to produce at scale what's needed. We need to go high tech, and we need a workforce that's upskilled to do it and is paid decently to do it. Similar with nuclear reactors. I mean,
Right.
I mean, I was again in discussion that I was being reminded. Look, I mean, building nuclear reactors. It's not like we need more nuclear engineers. I mean, in a certain way we do, but the fundamental point it was pointed out to me, what we need is more civil engineers. What we need is more mechanical engineers, because to actually build the nuclear power plants, you need those people, and you need the skilled crafts. That's what you need to build nuclear reactors. So you're talking about proliferating a skilled workforce.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Well, I know we have some excitement here from your discussion. Some hands are raised.